Well, good Friday morning, everyone. And I hope you're all ready for the weekend. It's going to be another warm one here in Sacramento. Anyway, yesterday we went way over our time. It was a very, very lengthy uh, little meeting. But today, in getting ready for the weekend, hopefully it will be mercifully shorter today. Uh, but anyway, I want to discuss something because it concerns, especially for Thelemites and those who are interested in the book The Law and modern magic as it is juxtaposed with the magic of previous aeons and what makes the new aeon magic different and all of that. And a big thing is this stele of revealing. Okay, this is just a line drawing of everything. And there's the back. It's a hieroglyphic document, and it's sort of important to it was important to Crowley because it sort of kicked off this whole new adventure of the supreme invocation of Horus and the age change and all of that. It was a catalyst that seemed to ignite the whole modern magical movements. But so I want to talk just briefly about what it actually says there, or at least as good as Crowley could have it translated at the time, back in 1904. And I think they had it translated into French, and then Crowley put it into he paraphrased it poetically in English. All of that before the supreme invocation and everything else, all before the writing of the Book of the Law, all before the Rose fell into trances and things like that. Well, this is what I say briefly here, and the magic of Aleister Crowley, rituals of the okay, and there's a beautiful color stele front in the front, and a beautiful color stele reproduction in the back too. So if you don't have a stele, you do now. Anyway. In 1903, Crowley had all but suspended magical workings and had taken a new wife, Rose, on an extended honeymoon to a score of exotic locations, including Ceylon and Egypt. In December, they discovered that Rose was pregnant. Rather than returning to their cold home in Scotland, they chose to travel back to Cairo, where the weather was pleasant. Assuming romantic identities, they checked into their hotel apartment as Prince Kheo Khan, Beast, and Princess Urada, Rose, and settled in. Crowley loved doing stuff like that. It must have been fun for newlyweds to pretend they were. Crowley, I guess, hired a big local athlete kind of guy and stripped him down into just a turban and a kind of loincloth and made him run in front of their carriage in Cairo, saying, make way for Prince Kheo Khan and the Princess Urada, maintaining a low profile in Cairo. Okay. But I digress. Perhaps out of boredom, Crowley performed the preliminary invocation of the Goetia. Now that's the Bornless ritual, and It can be used to invoke elemental. It can be used preliminary to any magical operation. But for some reason, I guess he started talking about magic, and she says, and the elemental creatures and things like that. And she said, "Oh, sylphs, they're like Tinkerbell. Show me the sylphs." Perhaps out of boredom, Crowley performed the preliminary invocation of the Goetia, proposing to show Rose the sylphs. Now, it must be remembered that Rose had no training or interest in magic. She did not see the sylphs, but instead, she fell into a, quote, strange state of mind, unquote. She began repeating as if in a trance, quote, "They are waiting for you. It's all about the child, all Osiris," unquote. She then informed her husband that the god Horus was angry with him for ignoring him. Irritated by what he first thought was Rose's childish behavior, Crowley began to interrogate her as to the technical attributes of this god. To his great surprise, Rose, who had absolutely no knowledge of Egyptology or magic, answered even the most technical and esoteric questions with 100% accuracy. The next day, they visited Cairo's Bulaq Museum. It was Crowley's intention to point out this god who wanted to talk with him. She sniggered as he ignored and passed by the most common images of Horus, but he was quite surprised when she excitedly identified an obscure wooden funeral stele of the 25th dynasty as the source of her communication. And that, of course, is the stele. Here, let me put the thing here. I'm going to check my sound here just for a second, everyone. So please bear with me, because it would be nice if I knew that you were hearing this. Hang on. Yes, it sounds like you're hearing it okay. Sorry for the interruption. Sorry for the digression. And we'll put that back there. Okay. Let's see. Even more stunning was the museum exhibit of the museum exhibit number was 666. Crowley could not ignore this curious chain of events. He had the stele reproduced and began systematically working with Rose as his magical assistant. I refer to you the color images of the stele right here in this book. Space forbids us to detail what followed. The reader is again referred to the previous mentioned text, most specifically the Equinox of the Gods, which we talked way about back in April, at March and April. Suffice to say that through Rose's unexpected mediumship, contact was established with a praetor-human intelligence calling itself Aiwas, a messenger of Hur-Par-Krat, or the Egyptian god, one of the twins of Horus, who announced the equinox of the gods, or the changing of the age, and the intention of the gods to use Crowley to receive a book that was to be the fundamental revelation of the age. On March 20th, 1904, Crowley performed the supreme invocation of Horus, which formally initiated the aeon of Horus. Then, per instructions, between noon and 1 o'clock on April 8th, 9th, and 10th, he entered the same temple, it's a hotel room temple, sat down at a writing table, and wrote what was dictated to him by an audible voice. The results of these 3 hours of dictation are the 3 chapters of the Book of the Law. Now, the reader is neither asked nor expected to believe this story. Each must judge for himself or herself the value of the book. As I mentioned earlier, it is a fundamental proscription of the text to offer, to interpret, or even discuss the book of the law. It's entirely up to each of us to fathom its meaning in relationship to our individual lives. Okay. That's sort of what I have to say at the beginning of the chapter here that I discussed the book of the law. But it just occurred to me that sometimes it's very nice to just hear what it was that the stele was saying. Now, the back of the stele is pretty much the standard magical incantation that is carved for everybody who dies and gets one of these first-class funerals here. This verse from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, with the newly dead individual's name just plugged in into it, is what's engraved on the foot, or the bottom foot of a scarab, like a stone or clay scarab beetle, about the size of a person's fist. Now, when a mummy is prepared for its eternal burial, part of the embalming process is they take the organs out and they put them in jars and preserve them separately because all of the guts and stuff would corrupt the preservation process, and so they remove the heart, and it's in one of these jars. But in place of the heart, they wrap up this particular fist-size scarab beetle and have this magical incantation engraved on it for all of the underworld people to go, aha, okay, this guy's got the magic juju in his heart. He's okay, let him through. And then the front is also kind of from the Book of the Dead, more or less customized with the names and of the parents and the particular obituary kind of stuff for the individual. Now, this is the funeral stele of this guy right there, Ankaf Nakansu. That's the new dead guy that this is the tombstone for. And what's really curious is he created it himself. He fashioned it himself. He fabricated it himself. It'd be like if we would run across the tombstone of Benjamin Franklin. But it would really be a curiosity if we knew that Benjamin Franklin actually carved the tombstone himself. Well, that's kind of what this was. I don't know if Ankaf Nakansu was, Benjamin Franklin level, courtier. But he was pretty far up there throughout a couple of administrations. I joke and say he was like the Henry Kissinger of a couple of administrations, and that's one of the reasons why this kind of modest stele found itself exhibited at a museum, because it was a historical character they really know about. He's in Budge even, okay. So, I was supposed to keep this short today. Here's what I'm going to do. Now, when I was initiated Minerval degree in the OTO, I stayed a couple days at the home of Grady McMurtry and his then wife Phyllis Seckler McMurtry. They had a home in Dublin, California, and that's where I was initiated. I took my both my 0-degree Minerval and my first degree about 9 months later in their garage temple. It was so cozy, cute. It was, anyway, that's another story. But Grady sent me home with a letter size letter. This is a letter. He sent me home with a legal size printout, of black and white printout of the stele, just like this, and of the back, just like this. And with that, I created my own stele, because unlike today, you can't buy beautifully fashioned handmade steles on the internet. So I had to make my own. So I became pretty intimately familiar with every character, because actually everything that you see in a line drawing, I actually drew and then cut out a very thick poster board, and I placed it as like little templates on a board. So all my characters are raised up, you know, 1/8 of an inch or something like that. But anyway, I digress. I'm just going to read to you Crowley's paraphrase of what these hieroglyphs meant. And he did the best he could in 1904 to have somebody at the museum translate it into French, and then Crowley paraphrasing it into English. And here's what all of these little things up there, and here that they say on the front. And they describe the characters: Nuit, Hadit, Rahur Kuit, Ankaf Nakansu. Above the gemmed azure is the naked splendor of Nuit. She bends in ecstasy to kiss the secret ardors of Hadit. The winged globe, the starry blue, are mine, O Ankh-Af Nakansu. I am the lord of Thebes, and I, the inspired fourth speaker of Mentu. For me unveils the veiled sky. The self-slain Ankh-Af Nakansu, whose words are truth, I invoke. Greet thy presence, O Rahur Kuit. Unity uttermost showed. I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God. Who makest the gods and death to tremble before thee, I adore thee. Appear on the throne of Ra, open the ways of the Ku, lighten the ways of the Ka. The ways of the Kabs runs through to stir me or still me. Let it kill me. The light is mine, its rays consume me. I have made a secret door into the house of Ra and Tum, of Kephra and Ahathur. I am thy Theban, O Mentu, the prophet Ankh-Af Ankansu. By Bes Na Maut my breast I beat, by wise Tanech I weave my spell. Show thy star splendor, O Nuit, bid me within thine house to dwell. O winged snake of light, Harit, abide with me, Rahur Kuit. Now, that's how Crowley published in the Equinox of the Gods. That's how he published his paraphrase of all of this on the front. Now, many of you will recognize, oh, that comes right out of the Book of the Law. While it does come out of published versions of the Book of the Law, it does not come out of the dictated portions of the Book of the Law. Those little poetic snippets from the Stele were inserted after the Book of the Law was dictated, when consulting with Rose, who supposedly wasn't even in the room when it happened, which may have been because she was out of herself when maybe her meat bag was in the, who knows. But that's what those sections were inserted. This would be a good place to stick that Stele thing that we had translated a few weeks ago. Okay, that's exactly what happened. And for those of you that were expecting Aum Let It Fill Me, that in one of the early printed editions of the Book of the Law, printed many years, at least 8 years after all of this took place, in a sense was a printer's error. Crowley had the handwritten copy of the Book of the Law that the typesetter was going to print, and he said, "Oh, I want you to insert this thing that we translated earlier. I'm going to insert this little section and do it from The Light Is Mine or something like that, all the way down to," and then Crowley actually wrote it just in the marginal scribbled notes down to "Fill me." And the printer said, "Oh, well, I think does that mean I changed the words?" So, look, I wouldn't get into a bar fight over "kill me, fill me," okay? Because neither of them are part of the dictated text of the Book of the Law that Crowley heard I was doing. Anyway, now that I've reopened up that can of worms, here's what it says on the back. And remember, this is generally with just a few little modularly insertions of specific deceased names and things like that. This is what is on that heart chakra, heart stela, or heart scarab that's inserted in place of every mummy's heart, or at least every well-dressed mummy's heart. Okay. Saith of Mentu, the truth-telling brother, who was master of Thebes from his birth. O heart of me, heart of my mother, O heart which I had upon earth, stand not thou up against me a witness. Oppose me not, judge in my quest. Accuse me not now of unfitness before the great God, the dread Lord of the West. For I have fashioned the one to the other with a spell for their mystical girth. The earth and the wonderful West, when I flourished, O earth, on thy breast. The dead man, Ankh of Nakansu, hath said, I'll repeat it the way it's spelled here. The dead man, Ankh of Nakansu, saith with his voice of truth and calm, O thou that hast the single arm, O thou that glitterest in the moon, I weave in thee the spinning charm, I lure thee with the billowy tune. The dead man, Ankh of Ankansu, hath parted from the darkling crowds, hath joined the dwellers of the light, opening Duant the star abodes, their keys receiving. The dead man, Ankh af Ankansu, hath made his passage into night, his pleasure on the earth to do among the living. And those of you who are kind of familiar with Crowley's own Mass of the Phoenix, that ritual that's done at sunset where the magician has sort of a one-man Eucharist with the blood and bread of his own blood and a cake of light. At the very end, he says, I entered in with woe, with mirth I now go forth and do my pleasure on the earth among the legions of the living. And that's sort of what that came from. Anyway, I failed utterly making this short today. Constance is going to chide me. Have a good weekend, everyone. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is a law, love under will.